Welcome back to Sports Talk ATL. I am Chase Lord, joined by Alex Lord. Thank you for joining us on this Friday evening. The SEC decided to not permanently, but temporarily for the 2024 season, stick with an 8-game schedule and not go to the 9-game schedule, which would have been the pod format where you get 3 rivalries and then you switch 6 and 6 versus the other teams. They're going to go 8 games. You're going to have one permanent opponent. We'll talk about the permanent opponent in the next segment, but this segment's going to be about just kind of the layout. So you get one permanent opponent, and then the other 8 teams will be based on a fair and balanced schedule, but they will take into account the traditional rivalries. So when I first, didn't really know much about this, I was worried, like, is it just going to be, are they going to just pick names out of the hat? Like, how is this going to work? Like, you can't not give me Georgia, Florida. Now that might be their one game, but you can't not give me Georgia, Tennessee. Like, I need to see that every year. You can't not give me, personally, Georgia, South Carolina, like that. That's a game I like to watch every year. As an LSU fan, we're both LSU alums. LSU, Bama, like, I don't care. Like, it may not be fair and balanced. I want to play Alabama every year. Like, that is a fun game. My friends went to Alabama. We go to that game every year. It's been that way for the last decade. Like, that game needs to happen. So as long as that's still in play, 8 games, whatever. I kind of like the pod format. I thought that was interesting. You get your 3 games and then you switch and you get to play everyone every other year. And that might be what happens in the future. But as long as they keep most of the traditional rivalries and we don't lose too much of what we've grown up as SEC football fans, I think the format's fine.
The problem is, listen, those traditional rivalries that we love are mostly East-West. There's only a couple, like LSU, Florida, Georgia, Auburn. There's only a couple there will be no more divisions. So all the old rivalries that we love are mostly by division. And that's where the fair and balance metric comes into play. The West has long been the powerhouse. In the early 2000s, it was, mostly the East was just unreal. Late 90s, early 2000s, the East was unreal. And then, from late 2000s to now, the West has just been an unreal gauntlet. So that's where the fair and balance thing is kind of worrisome in my eyes, where it's like, yeah, we went to LSU. I want to play Bama every single year. I want to play A&M every year. I want to play Ole Miss every year. I want to play Florida every year. And those teams are, generally speaking, pretty good. So where does it come into play where we got to play a Vandy, somebody like that? And Georgia, only their crosstown was Auburn. So, like, are they going to still play Auburn every single year?
I think
are they going to get Alabama? Because now Georgia has,
they're not going to get Alabama, though.
But that's what I'm saying, though. Like, that would be fair. The fair and thing, like.
So this is the other thing. Like,
so LSU. So look at it from Tennessee's angle. Tennessee is Alabama. Tennessee and Georgia have got to play. Tennessee's like, guys, get Georgia some harder games in here. That is where it comes into play, where it's like the fair and balance thing is what could mess up the rivalries. They said Ross Dellinger has been at the forefront of this. He works for Sports Illustrated. I would recommend reading everything he has to say. He does a very good job of doing it. He mentioned that primary and secondary rivalries will be considered, but they will also consider a fair metric, a balanced schedule. That's where things get sketchy to me, where it's like, I don't want to not play Bama every single year.
Let's say that they go to the 8-game schedule permanently. Is this 8-game schedule that they give each team, is that a permanent year, or does it switch up every year? Like, what is fair and balanced? Because listen, Florida sucks right now. But if you're giving me a 10-year contract to play Florida, I'm expecting them to be good at some point in that 10 years. A very good team, a tough team to play every year. Like a good team like South Carolina, like they're on a little bit of a come up. They're on a little bit of a come up right now. Like this year, they'd be a mediocre team to play. Usually they're trash. You're like, oh, thank you for South Carolina. So are we talking about a schedule? It's not permanent, so it's only for this year. But if it does become permanent, how long is this our schedule? Is this our schedule for the next 10 years? If they sign an 8-game contract for 10 years, is it for that 10 years? Or because you can't just, like, Tennessee's been terrible for 2 decades. They're good now, but they've been terrible for 2 decades. Like, these teams are, like, Auburn has traditionally been a good program. They've been terrible for the last few years. So what is fair and bad? Like, that's why I think you just got to stick with these mostly traditional rivalries, because Sometimes Auburn sucks. Sometimes Florida sucks. Sometimes Tennessee sucks. Like outside of Georgia, LSU, and Alabama, pretty much everyone has been off and on. Like LSU had 2 bad years, but they've last 15 years have been one of the best programs in the country. Alabama, same way. Georgia, same way. So everyone else has just kind of been like, eh. Like Ole Miss has sucked. They're a pretty good opponent now. They've been terrible for most of our lifetime. Haven't even won 10 games. So I don't know how that works.
It's just very it feels arbitrary about the way they're going. Whereas, you know, in the 2 division format, we played everybody in our division, 1 East rotating and 1 East permanent. And it was like solid, and you felt good about, like, you knew you were going to have that opponent. This one just feels like it's loosey goosey. Nobody knows what they're doing.
Yeah, well, we're going to talk about these individual matchups after the break.